So building community. We've naturally been doing that as just simply as people are attracted to labyrinths. And here we are online talking about not only building community, but we need to acknowledge we are in community with the Labyrinth Society and the Legacy Labyrinth Project and Veriditas and all that is coming together beautifully over our time together, and meaning these many years, frankly, these many years. I want to build on Judith's meditation. Recently, Veriditas has been working with Brian Swim and the whole universe story, and many of you probably have heard that name, but not quite connected what that means. Originally comes from the work of Thomas Berry, a passionate father who kind of began really a great thinker as he was, and a scientist as well as a priest. And the whole sense of the Big Bang, now that's sort of an older term for what Brian calls the Great Flaming Fourth. The Great Flaming Fourth. And that energy that started billions and billions, really, he says 13.4 billion years ago, still coming through and creating through the whole universe. And that as that force and energy comes through, the point is we need to acknowledge that we are working with that energy. We are working with that force coming through us. Not only does that mean that every action that we take is either creative or could be destructive, that every action that we do is either building on that or working against that. And of course, this is what the Labyrinth puts us in touch with, is this, that each step we take, each action we take brings forth something new, creative, and hopefully in loving kindness to build community. And so that sense of the kind of universe story that we are now finding through science, a collective creation story. Folks, we are literally made of stardust. Literally made of stardust. And we are part of the universe. We're not superior beings who think that we're just the end all and the be all. We are not. And that's part of the story too. Remember the Neanderthals? Well, somewhere in the future, they'll be talking about these human beings now called the Anthropocenes that we are in this moment. So in creating community, to realize that every action that you take creates, helps, nurtures, heals, that we have those powers. And we're pretty ignorant of those. But here we are welcoming people on May 4th to our labyrinths. And let me just say, this is very basic, but folks, building community is about hospitality. It's about hospitality. And I can remember as a priest at Grace Cathedral and other churches, training people to be on the welcoming committee, and you literally had to tell people to smile. Now, I don't think we're at that level. We get it, you know, okay, there we are. But really, to truly be welcoming, to truly be welcoming. When people don't feel connected to community, I think that's an important question. When does that happen? It happens often and most obviously when people feel out of place. They don't feel welcomed. They don't feel acknowledged. That's maybe new. They've never walked a labyrinth before, or they've never been to that labyrinth before, or they're coming together with people that will be strangers. What's that wonderful phrase? Every stranger is a friend I haven't met yet. And that sense of being present with people. So learning people's names, making sure you're welcoming everyone, having someone there once the walk begins. If you're holding the space at the entrance, you also need to work as a team to welcome people who may come late. That's another reason. People, anytime people are embarrassed, anytime they're embarrassed, like, oh my God, I'm late. What are they going to think? Oh my, you know, the whole walk is, well, okay, you know, I seem to be all right here. I started a little late. I hope I don't finish. You see what I mean? To really help people beyond self-consciousness. to help people beyond, the uneasiness, the possible embarrassment. And so creating community is just really a natural act, and allow yourself to be your host. I think we can use that instead of having the word hostess, but host, whatever. You're welcoming people in a deep, profound way. So that's just kind of the basic groundwork. And I think it's review, frankly. And so the whole sense of being able to be present at the Labyrinth, of course, you're welcoming people, you're holding space. I hope you are working with a team. And if you're thinking about May 4th, you may want to think, who can I invite to work with me? Even if they're trained, even if they're not trained, I mean, who would be helpful? Who would be helpful? So during the walk, usually these are open walks. People come, people go. You could encourage people in the beginning, and I would imagine that most of us would want to form a circle in the center of the labyrinth as you're opening the labyrinth, and allowing people to say their name, and not where they're from, because that's sort of international. It's where do they live? I mean, because I'm assuming and hoping that these are really on the ground people coming from 4 blocks away or 2 miles away, but not necessarily getting off an airplane and coming into an event. So that again creates community. Oh, I live right down the street. Oh, me too. That kind of connection you want to have people be meeting one another there. And I would go around twice. I would have people introduce themselves, their name and where they're living. And then secondly, what brought them to this day? What brought them to this day? One of the major tenets of the World Labyrinth Day is that we are part of the collective. We're all stardust, folks. We're all part of this great evolving flaming forth. And that labyrinths are connected, and that people are connected, and that the more we connect with one another, the more power that gives to the great flaming forth in our lives. So you're meeting, you're connecting, but people have this sense of collective power, but they don't have words for it. And I don't know that they need words for it, but that's the experience that the labyrinth gives, that we're all walking this path together. We're on a great pilgrimage from death, from birth all the way to death and hopefully beyond. And that sense of connecting up is so very, very important. Now, bringing ritual into your labyrinth walk is important as well. And I could see, even in an open walk, you might have some kind of gift that people get at the end, or maybe in the center you have a bowl of stones with words on them that you might have written on them, or you might order them from Amazon or whatever, but something that people can take home, something that people can have that's a concrete, specific item. In the beginning, when we started Labyrinth Walks at Grace Cathedral, we had a sticker. I walked the Labyrinth at Grace Cathedral, and I cannot tell you how effective that was. And that may even be an idea for another year as well. But so ritual is very important. And Judith, I want to bring you in here because we, this overlaps with what we can do and what we can offer to people besides taking a gift home. I remember the Dream Quest, Judith, where you, we had the global, the marbles that were Earth. Remember that?
Yeah.
People love that gift.
Yeah.
So come on in.
Okay. Am I going to get pinned in there with you, or
I hope so.
Okay. In the meantime, I think the thing about ritual in general is it takes us to a different state of consciousness. Like if we begin, as you said, with a circle in the center of the labyrinth and everyone says where they live, and then perhaps they mention why they're there. Then after that, if you do a breathing exercise, very simple, whatever works for you, and just kind of take people out of the ordinary world and ordinary time into the realm of what we can call Kairos time, ritual time, dream time. And that sort of invites people to get into a right relationship with themselves in order to have the walk. As we all know, the labyrinth takes us to that liminal space. But if to as you're creating a program on World Labyrinth Day, you can use that inner space to ready people for what they need to do. So again, I mean, I think what makes such a difference about all this is however you are in your state, that's what you transmit. So getting yourself ready before the whole walk, just to be connected to anything that is important and sacred to you, then that naturally comes through in your voice and in the words you choose to welcome people. But I do think that's a lot of what ritual making is about. Simple and less words and more breath and more body, because embodying the great flaring forth is what we're after here, isn't it? I mean, to know that in our bones and to know our interconnectedness with the collective, that's not an intellectual process. It's an inner process. So I think that's where ritual really is really important. Yeah, I think the other things that can help in that direction are having some music. And if you like to sing a simple song of welcoming, or perhaps even at the end, some kind of a sounding together, anything that brings us out of our usual heady minds into our hearts. So singing often does that. And we can certainly put some things in the chat as suggestions, but primarily it's whatever you've already got in your back pocket. Each of us as facilitators, what really works for you, what's familiar to you, how you bring forth your own good heart and presence that will transmit to people.
So Judah, the one thing about the songs and singing, I mean, I wouldn't risk singing.
Yeah.
You would. And I
Yeah.
have a feeling that I'm not alone in this
Yeah, I
group.
know.
So I have invited people to hum.
Yeah.
I mean, that works really well for me, that we can hum and then it swells and it quiets and it
Yeah.
swells but it is getting literally in the same vibration.
Yeah, that really does it. And also out of the head, and humming is the easiest thing that we can all do together.
Yeah, yeah. And also the shanty chimes.
Yeah.
Those work very, very well to move around the group
Yeah.
before the walk. We
Yeah.
haven't talked about ending the walk yet, but
No.
that's if usually in ritual, if I do it at the beginning, I'll do it at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I might, if I do the shanty chimes in the beginning, now these are open walks,
Mm-hmm.
but if you can encourage people to stay until the end and hold the space, they may not know that phrase, but to be present there, and then do the shanty chimes at the end.
Yeah, and even if it's an open walk and people are coming and going, maybe the last group of people that are there are the ones that close the labyrinth. So the labyrinth holds it all.
Yeah.
Regardless of what people are there. And if it's a walk that is at one, as one at one, then there is an ending to it, perhaps at 1:30 or something. So
Mhm.
it depends on what walk people are doing. But I agree with you. I think the beginning and end should have some resonance with each other and some echo of the theme that you are talking about. And since the theme this year has to do with peace and planetary healing, that those words are sprinkled through the different things that the facilitator says.
Mhm. Mhm.
And in any group there might be a musician, there, and if you have a friend who plays an instrument or sings, invite them along, because collaboration in these things is so important, and also models what we're after: connection and community and collaboration.
Right. In that sense, when we say we want peace, well, and I can't say that everybody wants peace. I mean, there's a lot of
Mhm.
money in chaos and
Yeah.
more, but to bring it home, and I think that's what ritual does, and that you're so expert at, to bring it home into the body and to bring it home into your home. Is there peace in your home?
Mm-hmm.
What makes peace in your home?
Mm-hmm.
To really bring it close to home is very important.
Yeah, and we have to be it, like Amanda Gorman said, So I have it on my wall here. There is always light if only we are brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. I think she gave us a wonderful thought there that's embodying and being present with.
Yeah. And
So
I'm mindful of, I think it's Thich Nhat Hanh's prayer about peace in the home, peace in
yeah,
the village, peace in the, and so reading a poem,
yeah,
something briefly,
yeah.
when you're in the center,
Mhm.
but brief. A lot of times people don't relate to poems, if they're lengthy,
Yeah.
but if they're pithy,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know, it works well. So, and also I think I neglected to say that when you're in the circle in the beginning, not everybody may have walked the labyrinth.
Mhm.
Um, so that you might need to do a brief basic presentation,
Mhm.
and then introduce your role as welcoming people into the labyrinth. And also, you know, we have a tendency to greet our friends and then to kind of ignore the people we don't know.
Mhm.
So to really be all inclusive. And again, that's what ritual does.
Mhm. It
Rit-
does, and it makes it kind of levels the playing field. We're all in it together as breathers of the world,
Mhm.
and not, our credentials in the world or who we think we are, So it is a definite lovely thing. In these days post COVID and everything, I've begun to have people hold hands again. Certainly last couple of years, and there is something about what happens when you touch hands with someone and you really feel the presence that is really potent. And but that's a choice each individual facilitator makes about each walk too, and
Mhm.
some people may or may not be comfortable with that, so there are a lot of considerations about that sort of thing.
Yeah, the alternative I've been using is to place your hands over your
Yeah,
heart,
yeah.
and that's, but if people are holding hands and then someone else, 'cause in a hospital setting, I just
Mm.
automatically place
Yeah.
your hands over your heart. Holding hands in a hospital, folks, is not a great idea.
Yeah, I think we're getting into this thing about how we improvise with given situations. I mean, if you're in this labyrinth world, you've got to be really flexible, right? I mean, we've
Yes.
we've had that experience, Lauren, of how do you just flow with whatever is coming your way? And often that's just a skill and an art to, what happens if you're on the labyrinth and there's an earthquake? What do you do? Or
Yeah.
there's, a sudden gust of wind and everyone notices it. So being present with whatever is happening and going with the flow, that is really, I think that really is the key to it all.
And I think the labyrinth really teaches that,
Yeah.
and as a skilled facilitator, and the folks in this group that are in this meeting are are skilled facilitators, and you can always gain skill. You
Mhm.
can always gain skill. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And even when things go awry, that's something to learn from too.
that's right.
And things do go awry. That happens.
It sure does, and but not that often, and yet, and also that's the skill of handling it for sure.
Well,
It's,
I think what you have always said about everything that happens on the labyrinth is a metaphor. That's always a good thing to mention. There's some things to kind of mention in the beginning part of this when everyone's still in their heads, that you say things like, please consider everything that happens on the labyrinth a metaphor.
Mhm.
And I also always like to say our psyche knows how much time we have to process what's going on.
That's right.
Trust that.
That's right.
So, and to even to see the idea that, maybe what happens right now won't be part of your consciousness until 3 months from now.
That's right.
Like
That's right.
any of the gifts that come out of this liminal time usually take a while to integrate with themselves and come into your life paths. So those kind of things make people happy. And as well as at the end, mentioning that we have been in a special space all together on the labyrinth, and be gentle with yourself as you go back to the world. Uh,
Yes.
I,
Yeah.
I really always make that kind of comment that not everybody out there has been in here, at least in Dream Quest, and that is a longer ritual. But I
Well,
think any labyrinth walk takes us to a different space.
it does. And one of the things too, is we're kind of pulling together what we might want to make sure people say or think about saying if maybe if it's appropriate. And that is if the labyrinths are crowded with too many people, that feels okay. And of course, you are spacing people, so to be aware of that. But also sometimes people, especially new people to a labyrinth, expect they're going to drop into some deep meditation. So handling expectations is important. But also I encourage people to, when they're walking, not to try to meditate within, but to behold is the word I use. Behold people. And so it's an open-eyed, respecting, honoring every person that they see that's walking the path together with them, because we are all walking the path together.
Yeah. And it's a rare opportunity to get to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Thank you, Judith.
Yeah, thank you,
Lauren.
Lauren.
Lauren and Judith, nice to have you in conversation with each other. We're going to move on now to Lars Howlett, and he'll be talking about temporary labyrinths and the power of placement. So go ahead, Lars, and thank you so much, Lauren and Judith. We've got some questions in the chat that we'll come back to, and also we hope you will take into your breakout groups. If you have songs you want to suggest, please put them in the chat. If you have poetry that you would recommend, go ahead and put that in the chat as well. Okay.
Great. Wow. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and happy to share with you today. So these are some examples of labyrinth walks that I've hosted or created. And this is at the Parliament of World Religions, which Veriditas presented 2 labyrinths at, and also gave a presentation. And you can see we've laid out a canvas labyrinth indoors, and music can be interactive as well, especially now with sound healing. And so we had a local facilitator, Eileen Wolfington, who brought bowls, both metal and crystal bowls. And so you can see we tried something new, which we'd never done before, which is to actually have someone stand in one of her large bowls, and we would gong the bowl, and you would feel the vibrations and sound, all around you and within you, which was kind of an incredible ritual before walking into the labyrinth. And Eileen also had one that she could carry around, a glass bowl that she could play and kind of bless people and bathe people in sound and energy. And she also had this beautiful labyrinth shirt, which you might consider having, on the day of the World Labyrinth Day event, would be to have a labyrinth shirt to kind of identify yourself as a person on the labyrinth, or if you have a team. But we also set up a labyrinth outdoors, and this is something that we don't often think about, but why not have 2 labyrinths or 3 labyrinths at your event? We always tend to just think that one is enough, but at this conference, we thought it would be beneficial to have 1 labyrinth indoors in the center of everything, which was highly visible and, protected from rain and all of that. But we also wanted people to have a refuge away from the conference, outdoors in the open air. And so I created this labyrinth with tape, masking tape. And you can see I also created a temporary sign. This is just printed on large, like 3-foot by 4-foot paper and mounted onto foam core. And I had this sign there because we weren't going to be there the whole time facilitating. So I always think about signs as stand-in facilitators. And then what was really interesting was I created this labyrinth for peace and refuge and calm, stress reduction. And there was an artist there who was creating a installation about gun violence. And she came over and she said, would you mind if I set up these ribbons around the labyrinth. And at first I was kind of taken aback because they're bright orange and kind of loud. And my labyrinth was supposed to be all about peace. But I love collaborating with people, and you have to be open to synchronicity and kind of, as Judith was saying, improvisation. And so we said, sure, I already had it kind of roped off so people wouldn't walk through the labyrinth, but she took these orange ribbons, and she has 30,000 orange ribbons representing children in the United States who have been killed by gun violence since the Sandy Hook massacre tragedy. So it was incredibly powerful to contain this kind of beautiful healing space and surround it by this symbol and kind of memorial to lives lost to gun violence. And also, there were wildfires happening at the time in Australia, and we'd been through several bad seasons of fire in California. And so to me, it kind of felt more honest to recognize, the violence and the fire kind of surrounding our planet these days. And in the center of the labyrinth was a giant satellite image of the Earth, which is actually a tablecloth. So in the end, I felt like it was a really great balance to have the labyrinth contained by this symbolic, thing. But then when you got to the center, you could really come to yourself and connect to the Earth as a whole. And so, I bought this tablecloth for like $30, and I taped it to the center. It's actually 4 feet wide. It looks small here, but it's a large tablecloth. This is a large labyrinth. The pathways are, I think, 2 feet wide. So, and it's a simple 5-circuit labyrinth too. And I think when you create temporary labyrinths for events, I think simple is better. So to have a large labyrinth with 2-foot pathways and only be 5 circuits, I think really works well, especially if you think you'll have a lot of people there. You can also do taped labyrinths indoors. You want to test your floor and see that your tape is not going to pull up a varnish or affect your carpet. But this was at Labyrinth Summer School. And so you can see another 5-circuit labyrinth that we created for our rituals at summer school. My other favorite material is flagging ribbon. And this is a labyrinth that I created at the New Living Expo in San Rafael. And what you use is this, you can get it at the Home Depot or wherever, and it's used usually to tie around trees for marking. But I actually used in this labyrinth, it's called bird scare ribbon, which is like a holographic ribbon that they put on vineyards to keep birds away, but it sparkles in the sunlight. And so using landscape staples and this bright ribbon is really attractive. If you're going to have kids there, I think, something like this kind of draws people in. It's a little more playful, different energy. I had holographic pinwheels around it as well. One in the center, around the perimeter, and then a couple at the entrance. So, and I've never used this before. So this was another new thing for me to play with the holographic ribbon, but I would definitely recommend it and do it again. If you want to be low impact and use a natural material, then this is cornmeal that we used at Reed College on Earth Day last year. So we purchased a field marker that you use for like sports fields, and we filled it up with cornmeal. And you can see there's a center stake, and we ran the cornmeal around, and it was really beautiful. So very nice labyrinth. You can see again, we have signs with little reflections or sayings. And this was offered to students on Earth Day. And there was even a little tree in the center where you could write a intention or affirmation or blessing or prayer and tie it to the tree. And you can see here's our kind of information booths and larger signs. And these are also natural materials. So on the tree is with just a string and paper. And then the geese came that night and ate up the labyrinth and took it away, and the labyrinth flew off to another land. So it's pretty neat how that was. And then this was kind of my ultimate temporary labyrinth. But again, you can see this idea of centering a labyrinth in this space, and you want the labyrinth to have a feeling of container. So if you have a large space where you're creating a labyrinth or even laying out a canvas labyrinth, try to have the labyrinth be held in the space. If you're making the labyrinth, you can actually fill the space with the labyrinth, which is what I did on the beach in Santa Monica. And again, I decided to make 2 labyrinths instead of just one. And we used a trenching shovel to kind of draw the labyrinth into the sand. And then this is what it looked like. So it was actually a double spiral wave that then goes to a sun kind of setting or rising out of the ocean. And this is a more traditional labyrinth that you walk to the center and retrace your steps back out again. And this is a meander that goes from the museum to the boardwalk bike trail. So it's connecting the 2 spaces as well. So this was a fun project. And what we did was we put little flags so that it wouldn't get lost. People would be able to see where they were going. But then we left all these Sharpies and invited people to write, again, prayers, blessings, intentions, and the flags were already planted in the labyrinth, but they could go around and pick up a flag and then write on it and put it back into the labyrinth. And they also wave in the breeze and invite people in and encourage people to pause. Children that often just run through the labyrinth, when they have the opportunity to write in it, took a lot of time to sit and draw and write. And I mean, look at all these people. You need wide pathways though, because people kind of sit down everywhere in the labyrinth. But we didn't offer any specific intention, but a lot of the intentions that came through were about world peace and connecting to community. And as Judith and Lauren were saying about holding hands, another option would be to have a rope. And this was earlier in the pandemic, but we used a rope that everyone held together, or a string of prayer flags, and you can wind your way through a labyrinth, everybody connected by holding a rope or holding hands.
We're talking about ritual and intention, that the intention for World Labyrinth Day for all 16 years that it's happened has been to walk as one at one. And when you're doing your ritual with people, you can remind them that, they are helping to create a wave of peace all around the world.